Hello, it is Dr. Charmaine Gregory, and I wanted to share some additional wellness tips for physicians. And again, these are just targeted towards docs, but they can be applied to pretty much any professional. Okay, so not trying to be exclusive, I guess, or excluding anybody, but these are just some of the tips that I found have been helpful to me and to several others. So thought I would share. Now, if you have watched or read the blog, that was part 1. Talking about the first 5 tips, then you are going to be picking up here at tip number 6. Okay, so basically the first 5 tips, we talked about nutrition, we talked about sleep, we talked about movement and things of that nature. So hey Portia, thanks for joining, and Bethany, thanks for joining as well. Wave to you guys. There we go. All right, so tip number 6, take your vitamins. And I know that sounds like really simple, but it can make all the difference. Just like tip number 1 was nutrition and really focusing on making sure that you're eating well-balanced meals that are going to have, all the components that you need. So protein, your carb, your vegetables, etc. So, taking your vitamins is going to help to supplement that. If you have any deficits, it will also help with increased absorption of micronutrients, and it will just help you to perform better. It will help you to get your body to the level of nourishment that you need. So, some special cases in regards to this. So, of course, if you are a pregnant lady, then definitely getting in your folic acid. So making sure that you are taking a vite that's going to do that for you. And often the prenatal vitamin includes that. And so that's very important because there is a very important developmental aspect of us as humans that requires the folate and folic acid in order to be accomplished, and that is the neural tube. So the neural tube is basically the backbone, literally, of our nervous system, and formation of that is crucial in a healthy fashion. So making sure that you have your folate and your folic acid is going to ensure that that is in good stead. Okay, so pregnant ladies, definitely getting your prenatal multivite, which should include a good dose of folate. All right, so that's one special case. Now, I talk to a lot of people who are vegan, and so sometimes, and this is not all vegan, so please don't take this as an absolute, but sometimes some of the B vitamins that are typically available only in animal foods, you miss those. And so taking supplements that will help to bridge that gap is very important. So there's that. If there are any other things, hey Manny, thanks for joining. If there are other situations where maybe you might have an even more constricted diet, then definitely making sure that you get all of the basic vitamins is going to be key. So that's vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin K, and also vitamin A. So those are all going to be essential for replacement if you are having any kind of restriction in your diet. And then the other thing is, hey Manny. So the other thing is that for those of us who are in areas where there is a paucity of sunshine for part of the year, kind of like myself, and I've talked to great lengths about my issue with seasonal affective disorder, but making sure that you have a little bit of that sunshine vitamin, which is the vitamin D, is going to also be very helpful. Other things, hey Diane, thanks for joining. I'm gonna wave at you. There you go. Hey. Other things that we should note is that there have been some there have been some studies done where they've looked at the effect of B complex and vitamin C as far as improving energy. And I don't know if any of you guys have been at a track meet or something where they give the kids oranges, and basically just to kind of like get them a little boost of vitamin C, a little bit of energy, natural energy, and the natural sugars. So there you go. So having B complex vites and vitamin C is going to also be very helpful to assisting you with maximizing your nutrition. So taking a multivite or taking vitamins that you may need is tip number 6. Okay, remember, this is an extension of the first 5 that we talked about in the last live. Hey Shemaine, thanks for joining. All right, tip number 7 for wellness is going to be to write. And I did a blog post and a live about this the other day when I was talking about how writing assisted me in my recovery from burnout. Hey Yolanda, thanks for joining. And writing can take its form many different ways. I definitely talked about some very simple ways in which you can express yourself using your pen, and the very most basic one that we typically end up doing naturally as teenagers, and we don't always follow through as adults, but definitely something that we can follow through on, is actually journaling. So, when you get frustrated with that person that's on the phone that you're trying to advocate for your patient, and they're not necessarily seeing things in the same point of view, and working with you to advocate for the patient, you may leave that conversation very emotionally drained, very frustrated, and sometimes that can get pent up, and that can also be a factor that can lead to burnout. So if you get home from a particularly tough shift or a particularly tough day in the clinic, just pulling out your journal and writing those feelings down, writing down just everything that, just let it all out. And that is a very therapeutic way of dealing with that type of stress. Okay. Because, that is just, that's something that just compounds and is just not very healthy for us as physicians and healthcare providers. So there's that. So that's the most basic, doing journaling. And I also talked about how I got involved in a collaborative book project with some other physicians and a dentist, and we put together that book that I always promoting, and I continue to do that because I felt like I feel like it's a really amazing product, and it's the Chronicles of Women in White Coats, and that was just a collection of stories. It was literally true stories from our lives, just kind of giving a background, different aspects of what we saw and what we see, and our emotions put to paper and our thoughts put to paper. And so that is an option, right? So you can write a book. You can be part of a collaborative that writes a book. You can write a book as an individual. You can write articles for different platforms. So I mentioned several platforms in that broadcast, and I will just reiterate a couple of them here. So, everybody knows about my nose is sweating, so I apologize because I have the AC off because there's a lot of background noise. But you guys know about Kevin MD and Doximity and Medscape. So these are all platforms on which you can get your voice heard, and you can write articles and have them posted there and get published. So other options, there's several physician-led sites that are platforms that are popping up where you can get your voice heard as well. So our movement, the Chronicles of Women in White Coats, is starting a blog series, which we're going to have guest blogs from physician women, and that's going to be launching next month. So if that's something that you are interested in, definitely check that out, and I will drop the link for blog submissions in the comments below. So that's an option. Then there's Feminem for all of you amazing women who are in emergency medicine. So Feminem is a great platform to get a guest blog post out there. And there are just so many. There's SoMeDocs, which is available as well. I will also put that link in the comments. So you have many options for which you can get your articles published and your blog posts published and get your voice be heard. If, the avenue that you choose is not necessarily to write a book or to get involved in a book collaborative, then you still have some more options available to you. Okay, Kelly Dokie, thanks for joining. So, there are so many ways in which you can write, get your voice out. You can definitely express the frustrations that you may be feeling about, external pressures at work that sometimes can definitely cause you to feel feelings of burnout and cause you to feel powerless and out of control. And so writing is just a therapeutic and very cathartic way in which to overcome that particular aspect of the things that go along with our day-to-day job. So number 7 was write. Okay. Number 8 is mindfulness and presence. And so, often when we think about mindfulness, the first thing that we think about is, sitting in a yoga pose and saying but mindfulness can take the form of just clearing your mind. So you can really do it anywhere. You can literally be washing the dishes and practicing mindfulness. And all that means is that instead of having all the background chatter and the background attention grabbing items pulling you away, you are just focusing on one thing. So that one thing may be a thought. That one thing may be the process of the action that you're currently doing. So you can practice mindfulness literally anywhere. So I know of docs that will literally take a few moments before they go into a patient's room, particularly if they just had a previous patient that might have been difficult, or they may have had a procedure, or had someone that was critically ill, for example, in emergency medicine, who may have had a bad not a bad outcome, but may have died or may have, not done well, even with all the efforts that were put forward. And, moving to the next patient is definitely very difficult, because you have to almost compartmentalize your emotions about the previous patient. And that is very difficult to do, and then be giving completely to the next person that you're interacting with. And so sometimes just taking that, few minutes to just clear your mind and just consider your feelings about the previous encounter, and then just get yourself to the place where you can now focus on the next person that you're dealing with is key. And so that's all mindfulness really is. And it kind of ties into something called presence. And presence means that you are literally focusing on that thing, and you are literally being in that place at that time. So it is not, scrolling through your phone while you're listening to somebody. It is looking at that person in the eyes. It is engaging them with your body communication cues, as well as with your words. And if you're listening to what they're saying, being attentive, giving them feedback to let them know that you are there with them, and that and it's all about what is happening with them and the interaction between the two of you. So that is presence. And so, the mindfulness and presence really kind of go together, because when you are being present, when you are when you're being attentive in the moment, you are literally being mindful at the very same time. So this is something, and I'm sure Manny, you can speak to this in great detail, but I'm not a psychiatrist, so obviously this is kind of like my version of what those two items are. All right. So then the next item, number 9, is going to be get engaged. And what does that mean exactly? So getting engaged really means getting involved, right? So, we tend to, as humans, and this is just totally natural, not a dig towards anybody in particular, but we tend to, whenever there's a situation that we feel out of control, or we feel is not going in our favor or the way that we would like, we tend to just complain about it, or we tend not to figure out a solution to the problem, or to try to bring forward the problem, but then pose questions that may lead to a solution. So you may not always have the solution, but you may have a question or two that may lead to the solution. So getting involved can be it can be from on the small level, the basal level, or it can be getting involved deeply in your organization. So if you are, working in the hospital, for example, you can do things within your department that will affect change in a process. So if you find that, I don't know, this is a random example, but like, say, for example, you find that the lab turnaround is thwarted by the speed of the tube system. I don't know. I'm just pulling this out of thin air. And so if you take that step of talking to tech staff or mechanic staff, I'm not sure who it would be, and trying to figure out what stumbling blocks there are, or how would it be faster, for example, to have someone walk the labs over to the lab versus having to go through the tube, and then seeing which process is going to be more efficient and effective, and then bringing that data back to your group, and then of course having an implementation of a process that's going to make everybody's life easier. It's just because you took that frustration that you had and you found a way to troubleshoot the problem, and then you came up with a road to the solution and ultimately the solution. So getting involved can be as simple as processes on the level of your department, or it can be actually involved in the hospital itself. So getting involved on committees that are going to affect change that may affect you or other colleagues. Getting involved on the political side, so getting involved in your state's organization. So there's always going to be items that are passed in the legislature of your state that are going to affect your day-to-day practice. And so having a stake in that and having a say in that and being aware of what the issues are, and then even if your involvement is not necessarily to the level of going to the state capitol and lobbying or talking to your representative about an issue, it may be that when something comes up, you get involved in the voting of it, or you get involved in the discussion of it. So your engagement is key. Like, getting involved is really going to make all the difference, because that in and of itself is a step towards regaining the power that you can sometimes feel when you're burned out, because you feel like, all these things are being implemented, all these systems are being implemented, and I have no say in these systems. And so if you start getting involved, you start getting engaged, it will be recognized, and then you will be someone that is asked a question about potential changes. And like I said, you can ramp this up from your local situation, so your local facility, practice, hospital, all the way up to national, right? So you can get involved in national organizations like AMA or whatever your specialty national organization is, and just you can ramp it up. So that is definitely one way to help to alleviate some of the pressures that come along and cause you to have burnout. So that is a key to wellness, getting engaged. The last one, number 10, is fellowship. And this one is so, so important. We may take it for granted. We may not appreciate the fact that we as humans, we really need to have that fellowship. We need to have that interaction with our colleagues. And, it's not the interaction that we have at work. It is literally the interaction that we have outside of work when the external pressures of the job are not present. So, fellowship can mean so many different things. It could be that after a shift, you may go with your colleagues to breakfast. Well, for me, breakfast, because I work at night. But, you know what I mean? And so, therefore, you're doing things, you're engaging in activities that are going to build a bond, build a teamwork scenario that is external to work. And so, some amazing relationships can get forged this way. And so, the most valuable ones are also going to be when you incorporate activities that are interdepartmental. So, yes, you may know your colleagues. Yes, you may be very connected to them. Hey, AZ, thanks for joining. You may be very connected to them, but getting to know the anesthesiologist who you may need to, this is me, I'm talking about me now, who you may call down because you're having a difficult airway and you need assistance, or getting to know, and getting to them on a personal level, not just when we're both in like that sphincter tightening scenario when we're, trying to do our best to enable a successful procedure for a patient, but you're able to have conversations. You're able to see that you're both maybe moms, and maybe you're both aunts, or maybe your colleague that you interact with from another specialty is a dad, or he likes cooking, or whatever have you. But it's just that fellowship that really helps with wellness, because it is going to tie back into some of the other things I mentioned before. It ties back into engagement. If you know people on a personal level, there's more of an opportunity for them to recommend you for different things, or maybe you might have a casual conversation while you are talking together out at the park, and you say, hey, you ever thought about doing this? And it leads to a collaborative that makes amazing change, sweeping change throughout the hospital, that makes everybody's life better and everybody's wellness better. So these are just some thoughts of mine. And so I'm just going to go over the 5 that we mentioned today. And again, the previous 5 are in a different live and a different blog post. But number 6 was take your vitamins. Number 7 was write, because it's therapeutic for sure. Number 8 was mindfulness and presence. And then number 9 was get engaged. And then the final one, number 10, is fellowship. So I am hoping that this was helpful to you. If you did find it helpful, I really do appreciate you making a comment below to that regard. And I'm going to include in the comments the 2 links that I mentioned, the one for SoMe Doc's blog, and then the other for the Chronicles of Women in White Coats blog. So those are options for writing guest blogs and getting your thoughts and emotions out there. Or if it can be a platform for something that you want to change and get engaged in. So there you go. All right, so this went a little bit longer than I anticipated, so I apologize for that. But this is Dr. Charmaine Gregory, and I really appreciate you indulging me and listening to these wellness tips. And I'm hoping that you'll be able to implement one or all of these, and it will help you in your wellness, and so that you never, ever have to be in that deep, dark abyss that is called physician burnout, because it's not a cool place, and we don't want any of our colleagues to get there. All right, so be strong, be brave, and unleash your greatness.